Good evening, everybody. This is Cinnamon Noir. Welcome back to Castlevania Circle of the Moon. Got you that second time, Electric Skeleton. You son of a... Okay. So, now that we've received the tackle, which enables us to break those gray blocks that we've seen that are full of cracks, we can head back to the main area of the Abyss Stairway and move on to a place we couldn't get to before. I also pick up the Holy Water because it's pretty useful. I guess the fact that those gray... we also get the Venus card, which is pretty useful. So unlike Mercury, which mostly just gives you a different kind of whip, the various Venus attributes enables you to change your stats, which is quite helpful. With Venus and Salamander, we're just able to increase our attack. Well, I say just, but actually this is a fantastic upgrade. If I was smart, I would have started using that right off the bat and never stopped. Actually, it takes me a while to realize the effectiveness of this. I think I had forgotten exactly what all the DSS things do. Partly because I didn't actually collect many of them the first time I played through this game, but also because, there's so many different combinations. There's like 8 or 9 different planet cards. I guess there'd be 9 of them. And then there's 9 different creature cards. So that's a lot of different combinations, and it's kind of easy to forget exactly what they do. Especially since not all of the god or goddess cards actually does exactly the same kind of thing when paired with different creatures. It's more complicated than that. So I went into the Triumph Hallway for a minute, kind of forgetting that the Triumph Hallway is not what leads to the next area. Oh, I suppose I warped here in order to go back to the save point. Boy, I really was acting like a chicken this early on, trying to go back to a save point. I did literally just save. Oh, or maybe I was trying to go through here. That could also be it. Maybe I'm not such a chicken. Who am I kidding? I am. One thing I didn't actually know until later, although I was able to take advantage of it later, is that the Electric Skeletons also do drop a card. I have forgotten almost completely which enemies drop which cards. The only thing that's absolutely certain is that in a lot of cases the drop rate is pretty low. So you do have to fight a lot of the enemies. Yet another thing in this game, among many, that encourages backtracking. This game... Oh, look, bronze armor. That would have been nice to have last episode. Hooray. Against the Cerberus, I didn't have any armor at all, so that wasn't fun. But yeah, this game encourages backtracking to the extent that I would almost say it requires backtracking. Maybe not for really talented people who are really good at this game's combat and just click with it. But for novices and just like ordinary players, backtracking in this game is a necessity. You really can't avoid it. You also have to do a certain amount of backtracking just in order to get to the different areas. So, we'll be going through the parts of the Abyss Stairway in order to get to the next area soon. And then, in the area we have to get to after that, we'll have to pass back through this area, and the first part of the Abyss Stairway. This game's map, this castle, is kind of an interesting mix of compactness and expansion. So, in terms of the areas from which the little subregions branch off from, what you might call the hub is actually very compact. It's like maybe 10 or 20 rooms that you can just go in between very quickly and go to all sorts of different areas from them. But when you get into the different areas, you'll find a lot of them are pretty sprawling. There's a few of them that are pretty small and self-contained, but a lot of them just go all over the place and kind of ramble. So the map is bigger than you would think at first. You often look at these maps and you think, okay, the way that the game has been progressing, where I've been going in the castle, it seems like even though there's a lot of black space there, that you'll only really go in the center of it. But actually what you'll find is that in Castlevania games, they tend to fill up the entirety of the space, so the castle is almost square-shaped. Which I guess makes it more old-fashioned, like keeps, and older castles tended to be very squarish and boxy. It was later on with palaces that you had more of the long and kind of spindly design for castles. Which admittedly, there are Castlevania games that are like that. I would say the Castle and Portrait of Ruin is a good example of one that is sort of narrower and less of that square boxy shape that you tend to see in Symphony of the Night, Harmony of Dissonance, and this game. Sorry that I'm checking the map so often, by the way. It is just a little confusing. Oh, and another thing is that I decided at this point to go back and use that rock crushing ability to get a few things that I couldn't get earlier. I appear to have been a little confused here. again. The thing is, you might notice that little notch in the map that shows what should be a secret room. However, one thing I didn't realize, partly because while I played through this game the first time, I completely forgot about a whole area that is in the game. Which, you know, I started to have memories of it once I was reminded of it, but I had completely forgotten about it at first. That area actually bottoms out into that notch. And so that's when we'll slide through there and actually end up at the beginning of the game, after going through one of the last areas in the game. Which I suppose the game does just to blow your mind and show off how intricate the level design is. It is a pretty smartly designed map. I shouldn't disparage Konami. This game, no, they did a good job. A lot of the structural elements of this game are excellent. If anything, what I would say is just the basic combat mechanics are just a little too tough. But really, this game has a lot to recommend it. One thing I would say this game does not have recommended is the appearance of the flea men. They are gross in this game, and they don't look at all like the combination of cute and gross that I kind of like from the flea men. These guys just look kind of icky. And they have like sickle hands. I do not know what's up with them. I much prefer the more stylized look they have in other games. There are a fair number of humanoid enemies in this game, more so than in a lot of... you can see how annoying it is to pick up a sub-weapon you don't want. And here we have more brain float enemies, who we will not be able to do much with. And I'm just picking up scads of leather armor. Man, I must already have like 7 or 8 pairs of leather armor that are totally useless. You can't even sell them because there's no shops. And believe me, by the end of this game, I'll probably have 30, because that armor, for some reason, armor items tend to drop from enemies way more often than stuff like potions. Something I will never understand in this. You can get 20 pairs of armor from the same type of enemy before you get a potion. Which really does just give the impression that they didn't want you to use potions at all. The fact that they're so useless and so rare, which is a bizarre combination, it's kind of a sign from the developers saying, don't use potions. You should just find a way to use your single health bar to defeat all enemies, including bosses. Which I guess you could call that encouraging, but to me it's just kind of annoying. I really like the color aesthetics in this room. It's pretty restrained and subtle, but I like it. It does owe an obvious debt to Symphony of the Night's opening hallway, which it resembles to a pretty considerable degree. And funnily enough, even though this game does not imitate Symphony of the Night all that closely, there are a few areas in which I would say Symphony of the Night was a really obvious influence on it. This opening area also looks a lot like the entrance to the castle as shown in Symphony of the Night. But that's probably a tradition that goes back before Symphony of the Night. Much more important than the aesthetics of this room is the cross. There are, I think, a few other cross sub-weapon areas in this game where you can get it, but this is the most easily accessible one, and you can get to it really early on. So, the cross is the best sub-weapon in this game. Once you get it, there is really no reason to have anything else. I foolishly get rid of it in a little while, but I shouldn't have done that. If I was smart, I would have kept it. I struggle to think of a single boss that the cross is not good against. And even though it's probably the most expensive sub-weapon, it costs 5 hearts each time you throw it, it is so worth it. You know, don't worry about the expense, especially since you may already have noticed, getting heart-restoring items is actually a lot easier in this game than getting health-restoring items. Another one of those weird quirks. I also find here a miracle armband, which increases your luck, but nothing else. Naturally, I put it on because luck is very important to me. We'll see that pretty soon. I go for kind of a high luck build in this run. Maybe not the smartest idea, especially when I'm not that great at the combat, but to me, more luck means more critical hits, and more of a possibility of getting those potions where if I got 10 of them, I could maybe squeeze a reasonable health pickup out of them. And you know, hope springs eternal. I always want to get those potions, even though they suck. I guess this game, by giving me so little in the way of healing, has kind of trained me to see any healing as a blessing. Speaking of which, I go back to heal, as I am a chicken. We've been over that, but I'll say it many times. I don't know if the game means to sort of temper your healing by making you have to pass through these electric skeletons every time, but pretty soon it gets to the point where I don't care about these electric skeletons. They can't do that much to me. It is a little irritating though when you go to heal, and immediately after you leave, before you've even gotten back to where you're making progress, you already have a quarter of your health bar taken away by other enemies. One of the interesting quirks of a game which has very widely spaced healing rooms, warp rooms, and healing opportunities otherwise. That's just one thing about this game, I'd say. The way I'd sum it up is this game is tough. Not so much really hard in the way of like a Ninja Gaiden or something like that, but it's unforgiving. The game is uncompromising, and it makes you learn it. Or else you will die. And when your health is low, you just need to get to a health room. Like, there's no way around it. Ah, and here I get the luck ring. One of the luckiest things that happens to me. This actually slightly lowers your defense and intelligence. But, you know, who cares about intelligence? You know, intelligence didn't get me anywhere last episode. In both senses of the word. I also don't use magical spells that much, so to me, luck is much more important. I considered unequipping the luck ring, but no. I believe in luck. I'm a lucky guy. Ooh. So these ectoplasms can actually do a surprising amount of damage, considering they're these constantly respawning mooks. Down here we have another box that I cannot move. Kind of a pain. But oh well. We're quickly moving on here to the next area. You may have noticed this place already looks quite different from most of even the Triumph hallway, but we'll soon be going to a place that is even more distinctive in terms of aesthetics and other things. And that is the Machine Tower. Basically the same as the Clock Tower in other games. You can even tell from the gears that this is a Clock Tower. Why they don't call it a Clock Tower, I don't know. But one great thing that this place has is the Fox Archers, which are very clearly references to the Disney movie Robin Hood from 1973. I mentioned in one of my videos that, you know, there was a character from medieval fantasy who was a fox. He was called Reynard. And so, you know, maybe it wasn't from Robin Hood, but of course, Reynard was not portrayed as an archer, whereas Robin Hood obviously is one. And these enemies are fox archers, which means they're exactly the same as Disney's Robin Hood. The parallel's almost inescapable. I mean, this is a Disney reference. Which is so goofy in this game. Part of the reason I think I was reluctant to accept it is because it's such a goofy reference for a game that is otherwise so brutal and down to earth, like not particularly whimsical. But there is whimsy in this game. It's just, it comes in little bursts. You have to appreciate it when it comes. The whole Machine Tower is kind of a whimsical area. You have these brightly colored platforms that look kind of like the screw platforms from Sonic. I actually really love this area. The music is not so good, but the area itself is kind of fun. It's this weird combination of fun and frustrating. So, the thing about the Machine Tower that distinguishes it from previous areas is the rooms are really tall, and there's lots of moving platforms where you have to go back and forth on them. And sometimes you just have to start dashing and run around and take a leap of faith. Oh boy, and I lose the cross. Not fun. Yeah, so this time I go back and get it. The second time, I believe I just let it drop, which was one of the worst mistakes I ever made. The cross is actually really useful against the boss in this area, and when I don't have it against the boss, you know, I cried a little inside. But the thing about this area is because the rooms are so big, you can lose a lot of progress just by being hit once. This is an area that definitely tests your mobility. You know, how much have you learned about how to get around? Because you'll need to do it very quickly and without making mistakes in this area because of the Medusa Heads. Another thing this area definitely tests you on is, have you learned the proper use of that whip spinning technique? Because this is one thing that can keep away the Medusa Heads. The saving grace of the Medusa Heads is they have very low health. So even though they're constantly spawning and getting in your way, if you can hit them once with the little thing, you know, you can protect yourself against them. So by using the circular spin, you can keep them away from you permanently. It's just a question of, are you able to hold down the attack button at that point, and do you have the presence of mind to do it? Do you also have the presence of mind to stop doing it when you... Presence of mind, yeah, that's what I did not have in this particular area. I pretty much figured that by the time I escaped from that stone, that the cross was probably already a forlorn hope. Like, I wasn't going to be able to get down there in time, it was going to despawn. And then I would have also lost all the progress, so I decided not to go back and get the cross. Bad idea. Or who knows, maybe the really bad idea was just getting hit in the first place. You know, I don't know why I decided to do that. But yeah, we're just going to keep on here. One thing that's kind of okay about, you know, losing the cross here is that the boss of this area is not that difficult. Like, he's probably the easiest boss in the game so far. Maybe the easiest boss in the game, period. Getting beaten up by these heat shades. But they're actually pretty easy enemies. This is something that teaches you, again, kind of like the Medusa Heads, learn how to use that whip spin. Because you can destroy their fireballs in a single hit if you are using it. So, you know, if I'd been paying attention, I wouldn't have gotten a hit. Now here's a very typical kind of bonus room in Circle of the Moon. It's just a long hallway full of a few, landmarks, and then lots of enemies, whose purpose is just to wear you down. And this is the thing, because in this game healing is often so hard to do, these rooms with all these enemies you have to get through, it's kind of like a resource that you have to worry about, because you might get something from the room, but who knows if it's a health pickup, and you'll probably lose health getting it. So the question is, can you afford to? So there are going to be occasions in this Let's Play, I'll be quite candid about, that I have the opportunity to go to a bonus room and I just won't, because I'll worry too much about the loss of health that goes along with it. In this case, of course, there was a health room right there, so it wasn't that much of a big deal. But how was I to know that? I've only played this game before. Like, how can I be expected to remember anything? In my defense, it's been a long time since I played this game. I think when I went through the game almost completely, or possibly completely, like I said, I've forgotten, that was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and possibly even longer. So it's kind of weird, the combination of things that I remember about this game, despite the fact you wouldn't expect me to, and the things that I've forgotten about this game, even though they're fairly memorable. So this part of this room is definitely where you fully get tested in terms of, have you learned how to use this whip defense. Here's another opportunity to slide through, fight some fairly difficult enemies. These thunder demons are pretty hard. Finally decide to use my power-ups, Venus and Salamander. And I start learning how useful this is, This is, I think, the start of my turning it around and starting to actually get good at this game. I love how there is a secret hidden room inside this secret hidden room. Circle of the Moon is full of stuff like this, where, it's kind of like that one part of Harmony of Dissonance, which, there's a part in Harmony of Dissonance where to find one of the secret items, you have to use one of the, this secret gravity jump with the crush boots, which let you, push through a broken wall above you. You have to use it in a save room, which, in most cases, save rooms do not connect to anything. You wouldn't expect them to. And so that is really a mind screw. There's actually something in Metroid Fusion also where you have to blow through a save room. It's like you were asking me to use my brain in ways that just the human mind was not meant to work. Oh, that's nice. A level up. I can definitely use that. What I can't use is the other magic gauntlet. Because even though I use the luck ring, I'm not so crazy that I would go ahead and go full on with luck. And I make a curious decision here to not get the holy water. I think the holy water actually would have been more useful in the upcoming fight than the axe is. I don't know why I was attached to the axe. Maybe it was just after losing the cross, I felt like I had to hold on to something. So this is the stone armor. There's an enemy a lot like this in Aria of Sorrow. But in this game, one thing, I'm not sure if I'd say I like it or not. All of the axe armor type enemies are the same model, just with different colorations. In one sense, that is kind of cool. Some of them, the model with the various colors is very striking. But at the same time, not having any different models for them is a little bit of a little bit upsetting. Disappointing, I guess I'd say. You may have noticed there's a lot of little branching rooms off of the machine tower that we haven't been able to get anywhere with. We will be able to go through some of those once we get a few other upgrades. Or I should say, once we get the upgrade from the machine tower. Which, by the way, I do like the idea. So, at the very beginning of this game, right, we fell down this, giant pit with Hugh. And Hugh basically said, "Get out of here, Nathan. Nobody likes you. We don't need your friggin' help. I'll rescue Master on my own." Even though he's a total chump and he doesn't rescue crap. But I love the fact that while Hugh is going around the castle trying to do just various things to rescue Mr. Morris, Nathan is going up this quirky machine tower with all these guys, having a grand old time, playing with toys. And then eventually fighting a golem. I'll just spoil that. That's the boss for this area. It's this whole area is kind of silly. The idea that Nathan is doing this is all done in a single night, by the way, because this is all the night in which Dracula's being revived. Their plan is to, at midnight, I believe, or something having to do with the moon. There's some time element to this game. And eventually, after several hours pass, Morris will be sacrificed, and Dracula will be fully revived, so we need to stop that from happening. And so there's relatively little time to do this. Hugh somehow doesn't get any power-ups, and yet he goes through the whole castle. And meanwhile, Nathan's just goofing around, finding power-ups, having a grand old time. It's just kind of funny to me. I suppose this game having so little overt comedy in it, unlike something like Portrait of Ruin, makes me interpret the things that are in it in a more humorous fashion because I'm making up for what the game doesn't provide. But I don't know, there is something about this game. It's like, it doesn't have any humorous overtones, but it has a lot of humorous undercurrents, which I like. It never occurred to me before, but speaking of humorous undercurrents, the way Nathan's arm moves when he swings that whip is very weird. It looks like his whole arm is just turned to jelly. Kind of looks like he's using a shake weight, actually. And I get impatient here. I really should have cut some of this out, me trying to go for this. But admittedly, one good thing that it does show is me developing a little more facility with the mobility mechanics in this game. I get pretty good at this by the end. One thing I like that this tests you on is you have to duck in order to get past those things, but if a Medusa Head shows up while you're ducking, you won't be able to use the little whip swing in order to protect yourself. And so you have to alternate between the two. You have to find a way to get rid of the Medusa Heads while still being able to duck under those electrical barriers. Kind of a cool little combination of tests. With a lot of things in this game, it doesn't necessarily test your ability to do two things at once, but that puzzle does. I was convinced there was a secret room in here somewhere, but it was not to be. One thing that I do like about this area, even though it can be a little tedious and frustrating, is that one of the things you learn going through this is that you can actually get up these rooms much faster than you might think you can. If you play it safe and are just like jumping from one to the other, and making sure you know where you're going to land, then it's pretty slow going. But if you're willing to just sort of wing it and start jumping up platforms, dashing around like crazy, you can actually scale these rooms much faster than you'd think. I also like that you can hit the Fox Archer's arrows. One nice thing about this game, and one of the few ways in which it is actually a little more forgiving than some other Castlevania games, is that most projectiles in this game that enemies throw can be destroyed. And since you have this ability to sort of intercept any missile that comes at you before it hits you, using that whip swing, the circular swing, in that sense, actually, your defense in this game, just from a purely, like, your physical defense, is much better. I would say, I guess, that this game has a high skill ceiling with its combat, more so than Harmony of Dissonance does. Well, maybe not more so than Harmony of Dissonance. Certainly more so than Aria of Sorrow in terms of the basic combat. Aria of Sorrow actually is fairly simplistic combat compared with this game. I think a lot of the games where you use various types of weapons that you choose from a menu instead of just the whip tend to have kind of de-emphasized combat mechanics, or at least de-emphasized weapon combat mechanics, in favor of other types of combat mechanics. So this game, I'd say, is a fairly high skill ceiling compared with Aria. And so does Harmony of Dissonance, but this game may actually have the higher one. It's difficult to say. So much of this game depends on positioning. Whereas with Harmony of Dissonance, it's more like how you use different attacks that counts. In this game, when you fight and it looks really cool in this game, it's because you dodge enemy attacks. Nathan is spry enough that he can do some really cool things moving around. I would even say, me being a novice, even some of the ways I manage to make Nathan move around are kind of cool. So that's one thing I really like about this game, and it's one of its saving graces. And believe me, this is very much a game that needs it. It's so hard, and in some cases so, annoying, that you need something in this game to keep you going, and the stylishness of Nathan as a character is one of them, I think. He's not as stylish as Soma. I mean, nobody is, but we can't all be, Japanese foreign exchange students. Have I finally learned that I really should just keep this Venus and Salamander combo on full time? I don't know. But I'm certainly using it now because, I'm in a bit of a desperate situation. I can't take a lot more hits here. One thing that's a little annoying about this game, on top of everything else, is that enemies can recognize you and start attacking you, get aggroed basically, before they're visible on screen. A lot of those foxes are firing arrows before I see that they're there. So even though maybe I should kind of guess that they're there because, there have been other foxes in this room, I get caught off guard by them, and sometimes that causes me to get hit. by their arrows. This game can sometimes have that Spelunky feel, where it's like you're getting caught off guard by things you couldn't possibly notice. Another thing is, there are enemies that will not so much aggro when they're off-screen as they'll aggro when you pass by them, and then because there's so little screen real estate, you'll quickly leave them behind, but they'll still be attacking you. So these heat shades are a perfect example of that. I'm having 3 heat shades attack me at the same time from all over the room. And I can't see any of them at the time when their attacks are coming at me. These earth armors can be a bit nerve-wracking, because the way they start their attack, it's kind of hard to see where it's going to start once they're done. It doesn't start at the sword, it starts somewhat beyond it. There's later enemies like that are even more irritating, which use poison, which coincidentally belong to my least favorite area in the whole game. So that'll be fun when we get to that. I don't know why his attack didn't even work that particular time, but I'm not complaining. Any glitch this game has which causes me to be left alive is a good one in my opinion. So we finally make it to the save room before the boss. One thing I will say in this game's favor is even though the save rooms are very, spaced very far apart and, kind of hard to get to sometimes, normally they do put a save room reasonably shortly before the boss. Ooh, that looks like a nice item. Looks like it, but all it really does is massively raise our intelligence. And as I said before, I don't care much about intelligence. Intelligence doesn't keep me alive in this game. Dumb luck does. Like, literally dumb luck, because I don't have any intelligence. So that's what I'm sticking with. It's worked for me before. I am not sticking with that knife, because screw the knife. So yeah, this is what you might call the boss run, like in a Dark Souls game. And in this case, it's fairly easy to get through without getting hit at all. Which is what I want. So here we have the Iron Golem. In terms of dodging his attacks, this is the easiest one in the game. Like, you can hit those gears that he drops from the roof, and so if you do, like, this guy's kind of a chump. He can't do much to you. His attacks are no great shakes. Like, that is his worst attack, definitely. The one where he punches and then sends out all those little explosions. But that is not actually very hard to dodge. You can just run away from him, and that'll work. One thing I forgot here is that those gears do stay on screen a little bit longer after you hit them. If anything, I would say the difficult thing about this guy is that he can kind of get you into a corner, and he is tall enough that it is a little bit difficult to jump over him. So learning how to jump over him successfully can be a bit frustrating. Another frustrating thing is he can just heal himself. I do have a thing against enemies in this game that have the ability to heal themselves. It's often kind of arbitrary, and I don't understand why they're able to do it. But oh well. Axes aren't the best against this guy because he just stays earthbound, and so something that can sort of stick in one area and hit him is a lot better. But you can obviously see in terms of the way he's moving around, this guy is so much easier than the previous bosses. Like, it's ridiculous. This guy probably should have been the first boss in the game. Even with his ability to heal, he is nowhere near being as difficult to handle as, like, the Cerberus. The one thing about him is that one particular attack hits like a truck, but it's so easy to dodge. I mean, maybe I shouldn't be saying that because I've been hit by it 3 times now. But I'm really doing a terrible job against this guy. Like, don't take this as a normal fight against this guy. I remember even playing this game for the first time. This guy seemed like a complete waste of space to me. Like, I toyed with this guy. And even then, see, like, I probably could have taken another hit. Which I don't think was true for, like, the Cerberus or the Necromancer. Oh, hey, Hugh. How's it going? No, I'm trying to help your dad, you selfish asshole. Okay, in Hugh's defense, this probably isn't his, like, baseline personality. It does seem, and we'll see later on in the game, like the castle's kind of affecting Hugh. Like it's bringing out some aspect of his personality he didn't know about before. So here we get the kick boots, which will enable us to wall jump. Pretty useful ability in this game, although there's very limited horizontal movement that you can do after a wall jump. Wall jumps are much more useful for vertical traversal than for horizontal, which we'll see soon. Oh, and from the Heat Shade, we get the Jupiter card. I'm a big fan of Jupiter. it tends to, I think, change the nature... Oh, no, sorry. Jupiter does various kinds of effects. With Salamander, what it does is it causes us to be surrounded by 2 flames, which actually, I use this ability a lot, because this is really helpful. These things can handle a lot of stuff for you, and protect you at the same time, which is nice. So, having gotten through the machine tower, we're going to rest here for a bit. See you next time, guys.